And so now so it was in this situation where Yuan, using Duan, is trying to, in a should I or should I not destroy the revolutionaries? If they wanted to, they could. Again, not very confident with Chinese manufacturing, but the Hubei army, they used Chinese equipment. The Beiyang army used German equipment. So it's kind of like a German engineering versus Chinese engineering in 1911, and so you can kind of tell who's going to win. And so in this case, they started to have negotiations. The South, the revolutionaries, they all gathered in Nanjing. They were still waiting for Sun Yat-sen. Sun Yat-sen wasn't back yet. We're talking about December. So they had a representative called Wu Tingfang. Wu Tingfang is actually one of the most illustrious early Hong Kong Chinese person. He was the first Chinese barrister. He was the first Chinese judge. He was the first Chinese legislative member in Hong Kong. Yeah, he went to St. Paul Boys. So he's a very illustrious Chinese person. He represented the revolutionaries. The north side, the person who was in charge of the negotiations, a guy called Tang Shaoyi. So in the north-south, north-south, it's Tang versus Wu Tang, or Tang Wu. And so an interesting thing is they're both Cantonese. Tang went to America. I think he either went to Columbia or somewhere. And then Wu he was in Lincoln's Inn. He went to British. So it's kind of like an American Chinese versus like a British Chinese. And they were negotiating. Most likely, this whole thing, obviously as a Cantonese person, this is very important to me, they did it in Cantonese because they're both Cantonese. So if you watch any movies and they're doing it in Mandarin, that's not true. In those days, those people, Cantonese person couldn't speak Mandarin. Not that they can now. So they were negotiating, and negotiating is fine. Yuan Shikai, you have the whole Beijing in charge. If you force the Qing court to abdicate, you can be the first president of the Republic of China. You can be the Washington of China, the Napoleon of China, the second Washington of the world. And Yuan Shikai was like, hey, that's pretty nice, very nice. Until Christmas Day, 1911, Sun Yat-sen came back. Sun Yat-sen, during the revolution, was in... a lot of accounts said that he was in Denver. Sorry, I have to get very technical with this. A lot of accounts said that during the revolution, on the 10th of October, he was in Denver. He wasn't in Denver. He was actually in Utah, going to Denver. It's very important because I lived in Denver for a while. And so he was actually in Utah, going to Denver. He's asking for money because he knew that Wuhan, most of the Qing soldiers were out. So they knew that they needed money to create some kind of revolution in Wuhan. He just didn't know that happened before he got his money there. So from October 10th to Christmas 1911, he went around the world asking for money, getting none. Nobody would, that's because if you think about it, at the time, the Chinese government, the biggest source of taxation came from customs. And the customs were actually collateral, because you remember the 1901 treaty, 申草条约, China to pay 450 million taels of silver, because each Chinese person must pay a tael of silver as a token of apology that we would never do anything like that to white people again. So each person one tael. So there were 450 million people, so 450 million taels. Obviously, you don't have that kind of money. You can pay us back, as in white people back, in 39 years, and the total will be 980 million. And obviously, you don't have 900 million, so what do? We're going to use your taxation as collateral, and you're going to pay us back in 36 years. And so whoever could talk to the foreign powers would then have power in China, because when you fight a war, money is the most important factor. And so when that happened, Sun Yat-sen went around asking for money. Nobody was given, he had no credibility. Yuan Shikai was the guy that the foreign powers knew who was ultimately going to be in charge of China. So when he arrived in Shanghai on Christmas Day, all the revolutionary generals were asking, like, I heard you're going to, and reporters, I heard you brought back $2 million or yuan or silver coins for the war effort. And then Sun Yat-sen said, I brought back the dream of revolution. And everyone was like, and I was forced to clap. And so he was there on, and it was an election on the, with all the revolution representatives in Nanjing, all 17 provinces at that time, apart from the Beijing area, the other 17 provinces were voting. Out of the 17 provinces, 16 was for Sun Yat-sen to be the temporary president of China, of the Republic of China. And then when that happened, Yuan Shikai was furious. I thought he fired Tang. He was like, I thought we had a deal. I thought we're going to be. I thought if I were going to force the Qing court to abdicate, I will be the first president. How come he became the first? And so he decided to fight again. He decided to go on again. Then Sun realized he had a problem. He was like, okay, let's fight. So the soldiers were asking, so we need money. We're like, okay. So, and then he was asking the Department of Finance in Nanjing at the time, how much money we got? He was like, $20, which comes up to about one shot of the cannon. Yuan Shikai was sitting on about 6 to 8 million. You think about the scale. And so they're fighting, and Sun was, a very practical man, and said, you know what, Yuan Shikai, if you force the Qing court to abdicate, you can be the temporary president. And Yuan was like, okay, well, think about it. And throughout January, there was a huge fight because, again, Beijing was still under the control of the Manchurians. At the time, there was the Manchurian, so-called the aristocratic party that was led by Liang Bi, along with Prince Chun was out at the time already. Yuan was actually voted to be the prime minister of the cabinet. Him and some of the young guys with more militant background was like, we're not going to we're going to rescind power that easily. Okay. Yuan at the same time, because he knew that if he forced the Qing court to abdicate, he would be president. So what did he do? He went to see Long Yu. Okay, this is on the 16th of January, 1912. We're in 1912 now. On 1st of January 1912, Sun Yat-sen already sworn to be the president of the Republic of China. So you could see how random everything was. On the 16th of January 1912, we actually have a pretty good account because we actually have a first-hand account of that meeting, even though he understood nothing. And that was Puyi's biography. He said on that day, he obviously didn't know it was January 16th. He was 6. Long Yu, the Empress Dowager, was behind the curtains, as the Empress Dowager would be, crying. There was a fat old man kneeling down and crying. Obviously, it was Yuan Shikai. Yuan Shikai, what was Yuan Shikai doing? He was giving a very compact, very succinct course on world history to Long Yu. For example, he was like, Long Yu, Empress Dowager